Hey gang, it's your buddy Platt back with another episode, an episode of Value Spirits. The particular spirit today is Jim Beam Kentucky Straight Bourbon. If it says straight bourbon, we know it's aged 2 years. This is actually aged 4 years. They do state that on the bottle. I purchased this one, I believe, for $16.99. So again, we're under $20 for a bottle of 80 proof aged spirit. Pretty good deal. Jim Beam is the #1 selling bourbon throughout the world. Sold in over 200 countries. Not necessarily here in the U.S. It doesn't get quite the buzz because there's just so many bourbons out there. You know, bourbon is our national spirit. But to the rest of the world, this is bourbon. If you were to go, you know, to a bar in Japan or South Africa, wherever, and ask for a bourbon, this is probably what they're carrying. At the bare minimum, you may obviously find a Four Seasons resort in Kuala Lumpur that has a wider variety, but this is bourbon in a lot of people's eyes across the world. Jim Beam is also the 14th best-selling spirit in the world. That includes all spirits: vodka, rum, gin, tequila, what have you. This is a big boy, definitely a very important spirit in the market. Jim Beam, as far as the brand goes, has been ran by 7 generations of the Beam family. Apparently they immigrated from Germany back in the 1700s. I think their name was originally spelled B-O-H-N, like bomb or bohm or something like that, but they changed it to Beam. It dates back, as far as the spirit itself, dates all the way back to 1795 when Jacob Beam started producing and selling this stuff. At the time, it was known as Old Jake Beam's Sour Mash. They weren't even using the term bourbon. 1795, the country's not 20 years old yet. There are no labeling laws. We're probably 80 years from the first labeling laws out there. So it would, they just used the term Sour Mash, actually. Oddly enough, the same mash bill has been used pretty much the entire history of Jim Beam. So you're literally drinking some history in this bottle. Oddly enough, back then in the 1800s or something, they didn't sell bottles. There was no liquor stores to go sell bottles. People actually took jugs to the distillery to fill up, similar to the way we would take a growler to a microbrewery and fill up. That's what they did. And it wasn't until 1880 when they decided to start getting in the bottling business, start distributing, and that's when they decided to change the name of the product to Old Tub. Jim Beam was known as Old Tub for a good 60 years. There's actually a brand out today called Old Tub. I'm not 100% sure their affiliation with Jim Beam or not, or if it's part of the parent company's line, but there is a Old Tub bourbon out now, and it's an homage to that era. It stayed Old Tub until 1943 when James Beauregard Beam decided to make a change. James ran the distillery before, during, and after the Prohibition era. And in 1943, they'd gotten through Prohibition, they'd gotten through the Depression, they're working their way through the war. He decided it was time for a change, and they changed the name to Jim Beam, thus basically naming it after himself. Also did something interesting at the time. On the label today, you will see his signature, James B. Beam, and it says, none genuine without my signature. And that's something you'll always see on a bottle of Jim Beam. And one other thing too, you'll also see the 7 generations of Beam that have basically been the head distiller at the company. Move ahead about 40 years or so to 1987, and another generation of Beam had taken over. Booker No had taken over. I had the fortune of actually having a little bit of bourbon with Booker back about 20-something years ago. In 1987, they released Booker's, named after himself. That was the first kind of small batch, barrel-proof product out there. You generally find it between mid-120s to 130 proof, and they were one of the first ones to do it. They started kind of expanding on what they had with Jim Beam. They brought in Baker's, Knob Creek, Basil Hayden, really some great brands that offer a little bit more than just a straight Jim Beam. In 2014, they ended up selling the product line to Suntory, and now they're known as Beam Suntory. As far as other Jim Beam products out there with the Jim Beam label, not to be confused with Knob Creek Arbor, there's a Jim Beam Black. That's a 6-year product that's bottled at 86 proof. Used to be 8-year, but now it's a 6-year. They have Devil's Cut, which is kind of a cool concept. They basically will take the water that they used to cut the bourbon to wash out of the barrel that the whiskey came out of, kind of get the last bit of whiskey out of the wood, some of the wood flavors too. And they also have a single barrel at 108 proof. Like I said, I do have to give a little disclosure. I've had drinks with, like I said, I was fortunate enough to meet Booker and have some with him, but I've had drinks a couple times with his son Fred that now runs it, and there's a future generation, his son Freddie, that eventually will take over. But I've lucked out and had drinks with him, so I'm kind of partial, just shooting you guys straight. But let's go ahead and drink some Jim Beam. All right. Ooh. That reminds me of kind of the first time, and this one, the very first bourbon I ever had, it was one of the first ones, and it was the first one I really started liking. But I get that, a lot of wood on there. It's going to be a little more aggressive. Remember, this product's been around 200-something years. They've stuck with the mash bill. There wasn't even, like I said, we weren't even really calling this stuff bourbon when it was created. So obviously, palates have changed. If you're used to the wheated bourbons out there, the Makers, Pappies, Wellers, this is going to be a little different. It's going to have a little more rye, a little more aggression to it. Let's dive in for a try. Yeah, there's a little ump to it. A little, you definitely get the rye spice. It's going to have more rye. That's why you get a little more of aggression. I really do like, though, the wood notes I'm getting through that spice. I'm still picking up some, some of the vanilla. You still get some of that corn sweetness that interacts with kind of like caramelized char of the barrel. That's pretty good. Again, today when you've got 8, 10, 12-year-old products and wheated bourbons, wherever you go, the modern bourbon drinker has a different flavor profile than what this was created for. That being said, though, $16.99, 4 years, pretty good little product, and it's good enough. I'll drink this like this. I don't have to throw it in cola or ginger ale or whatever. It stands up well enough to kind of savor neat or on the rocks. Again, it's palate dependent, like a lot of things. Yeah, there's, like I said, a little more aggression than your Makers, but to me, whiskey should have some little oomph to it. American bourbon should have it. If we think about the American spirit, the rambunctious American conquering, the Wild West or whatever, I think this just kind of fits into it. And again, I think just a ton of value for being under $20. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Also, please like the video because it lets YouTube know we're putting out good content. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or ideas for videos, please leave them in the comment section, or you can always contact me on the Twitter page. Till next time, bottoms up.